2024 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. We are still just weeks away from the start of the postseason, and tonight it is a historic return to the Brickyard as we are racing tonight in the Brickyard 200. There's been a lot of racing here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway over the last couple of, I'd say, week and a half or 2 weeks, Josh, but tonight it is time for the stars of the RSR Cup Series to do battle at a racetrack that they have not points raced at in several years.
RealSimRacing Cup Series as well, because you mentioned it, Evan. It's been a while since it's been on this 2024 calendar, but as we enter into kind of a pseudo-Olympic break before we go into Richmond in a couple of weeks' time, and then the final sprint towards the playoffs with Michigan, Daytona, and Darlington to round out the regular season, the standings and the story that they tell, well, it's a little bit of a more unique story with a lot of drivers with wins. Agnell Phillip, of course, still the most, top of the board with 7. Sam Nieto in a couple of rounds time can lock himself in on points, but seems like nobody else is really in that form just yet, with especially Steve Soa, Eric Papanow, Brett Larson, Grant Davis, Braden Whitaker, and more, all just spitting distance within the cut line if they can have a good night tonight.
Yeah, and I think it also shows how much opportunity is there, right? 7 different race winners over the course of the opening 15 rounds, but Peter Irons has been taking the lion's share of the headlines over the last couple of weeks with race wins in the last 2 races at both Nashville and Pocono. In the blink of an eye, he comes in as a bit of a late starter, missed the first, I'd say, 10 rounds or so, maybe a little bit less of the regular season, comes in super consistent, 2-time race winner, and immediately, I think, puts him in the conversation with the likes of Burke and Phillip as some of the drivers to be worried about when it comes playoff time. Of course, we talk about this Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This racetrack is known as the racing capital of the world for a reason. The NASCAR Cup Series back on the oval this year, and therefore the stars of the RealSimRacing Cup Series back on the oval as well. Funny enough, the numbers sound very similar to what we did at Pocono 2 weeks ago. This is an 80-lap race. It's a 2.5-mile racetrack. It is a 200-mile race. Of course, this track couldn't be more different than Pocono, and the one difference is that one of the corners at Pocono shaped after this Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Aside from that, a completely different and a completely unique challenge, unlike any of the other 29 races.
I think, Evan, I don't want to speak for you, but definitely one of the highlights of our last 2023 season with Monster Jam was a nice stop in Indianapolis and a nice tour to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that we took on a travel day. But this track just so historic. I mean, the bricks that are left now on the front straightaway, only a yard of them, hence the name, the Brickyard. But this place is just so historic, and it makes sense that with the world's biggest stock car series races on one of the world's biggest stages, and that definitely is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway almost to a T.
Looking at the qualifying session now, just about 90 seconds left on the clock as these drivers are in their single car qualifying session. Right now, just over a dozen drivers with the time in qualifying, expecting 22 cars to start. And you see Kyle Trudell, latest to go to the top of the board, 53.654, his best time at the moment. He was about top 5 in practice, looking for the likes of maybe Bradley Burke, Austin Coop. Those were some drivers who were really fast in practice earlier, who don't have a time down yet. Coop on a fast lap. Now you take a look at his 53 car going down the back straightaway. I do not see Bradley Burke on the racetrack, Josh, so maybe the best of the cars in practice starting on a provisional. Let's see what this 53 can do, though.
Burke not looking like he's taking a time. Same thing with Soa, Westbrook, Danson also looking like he's not going to be on the track. Last driver that is yet to put in a time is Austin Coop, who we're taking a look at now, and only going to have time for 1 lap. Of course, those 53, high 53 seconds, low 54s, what we're expecting from the faster drivers. Coop comes across the line. It's like a 54.4, so it'll be P14 for the number 53 Toyota Camry, but this track in these next gens, I mean, it really was kind of a mystery at how these cars would race at this track. And I think they race a little bit more similarly to Indy cars now with these next gen machines. But in iRacing, they're a little bit loose. They're kind of scared a little bit in the corners. You don't have to do a whole lot of turning until you get that tire wear in. But going into these corners, especially turns 1 and 3, the car is going to want to slide around. It's going to want to go up towards the wall. These drivers will be fighting that all night long, and a bit of downshifting as well. 5th gear down these long straightaways, down into 4th, heading into 1 and 3, keeping 4th all the way through, about halfway down the front and the back straightaway. But Evan, we're ready for the starting grid for tonight's race.
Indeed we are, so let's head trackside and take a look at your RSR starting grid. And in the end, it is Agnew Phillips' time who holds the test of time, and he will start tonight from pole position. The number 94 car with a 53.604. He's the best of them all. He'll bring us to the green. He will be joined by Kyle Trudell on the front row. Row number 2, third starting spot to the number 1 of Peter Irons, and 4th on the grid to the number 10 of Cam Patterson. And back on row number 3, P5 to the 28 of Cody Harris, and P6 to the 2 of Sam Nieto.
Andrew Farinage, who has won this race multiple times, looks to make it another one, but he'll be starting from P7 tonight. Michael O'Reilly will start from 8th in the Flat Out Esports number 44. Row 5, rounding out the top 10, Brandon Gass to the inside in the 20. He's going to have the number 24 Flat Out Esports machine of Grant Davis to his outside. Ross Cato and Thomas George, Fast Forward Esports, and Steel Horse Racing going to round out the first 6 rows on the starting grid.
Row 7 and lucky 13 tonight goes to the 51 of Brett Larson, and Austin Coop, who was the top 5 car in practice, settles for 14th in qualifying. It is Badachi Major starting tonight in the number 15 spot. He's joined by the Ironman Motorsports number 17 of Eric Papineau in P16. P17 going to the 90 of DeAndre Kane, and to the outside row number 9, P18 to the 38 of Matt Danson.
All these drivers did not take a time in qualifying. That's Bradley Burke, who we mentioned being pretty fast in practice. He'll start shotgun on the field, P19. Steve Soad, who was outside, P20. Tom Morano and Brandon Westbrook for Rogue Wave Racing and Extreme Performance Motorsports can round out the 22 drivers that look to take the green flag tonight, Evan, in the Brickyard 200. And I mentioned Andrew Farinage with a solid amount of wins in the past in this race. Well, it's a little bit more than a solid amount. He has won the last 3 times that we have gone racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. 2020, 2019, and 2018 all belong to Farinage. Well, 2024 belonged to the 88 as well.
He has the title as the only active race winner from IMS, with Bermudez and Silver being some names of the past of nearly a decade ago to this point. And Andrew Farinage could really use, not that it's necessarily home cooking, but some familiar territory cooking, because yes, it has not been a record year for Farinage. He's still in a playoff position. He still has an opportunity to contend for the title this year, but without a race win. He'll be in the playoffs irregardless of that, but I think he would love a race win to give himself a little bit of confidence. As touched on earlier, 80-lap race, 200 miles tonight, so we will pay out bonus points to everybody inside of the top 10 at the end of lap number 40. Fixed setups, as always, 4 tire sets available. That 100% fuel capacity could be interesting, Josh. If we happen to go green, it could make for a one-stop race if drivers are able to manage well enough.
We'll see if anybody is able to make it a one-stopper. I think we might have a couple of drivers that try it. At least yesterday in the NASCAR Cup Series, there was a decent amount of drivers that could make the longer stint on fuel go. Brad Keselowski almost made it, I think, 70 laps on his tank of fuel. So it's possible to turn it into a one-stopper. I think we're going to need a long green flag run or a ton of yellow flags in the first stint of this race to make that a possibility. But either is possible as the field gets ready to go green. Going to be going green this time. Again, some of the top cars from practice, including the top car from practice, Bradley Burke, no time into qualifying. He starts way back on the inside, or number 10 and 19th. What can he do in this one? Pace car off and in. Agnew Phillip in control. Can the 7-time race winner get an 8th on 2024? Let's go racing at Indianapolis.
One lap down, 79 to go, and from pole, Agnew Phillip leads lap number 1 and gets the first bonus point available in the race. First battle going to be back in the number 4 spot. Cody Harris and Cam Patterson do battle. It looks like Harris clear off the corner. Now it's a fight with Freenosh and the 10 cars. They might have got into each other on corner exit.
You can see these long trains starting to develop, and that's just kind of how this track always races. Whatever we see at this oval, they're going to develop those long drafting, those long slipstreaming trains. Still going to see some passing as we see Andrew Freenars look to the inside of Cam Patterson, looking to go 2 spots up from where he started P7. He's worked his way past Nieto, now past Patterson, and moved the 88 of Freenars up into the top 5 for the first time tonight. But this is all 21 of the drivers that took the green flag now snaking down the front straightaway, and here comes Sam Nieto to try and put another spot on Cam Patterson. The 2 looks to the inside and 1.
Going to be tricky to see if that 2 can carry speed in the short shoot there. And now as they head back into turn number 2, can you carry that speed? There's not a lot of banking to the corners here on the oval at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Still clocks in at 9.2 degrees. It doesn't feel like it at times, but that outside has the benefit of getting the run off the turns here on the sim as a pass happens in front of those 2. That was Cody Harris in the 28 car getting passed by the 88 of Freenosh for P4. In the sim, unlike the real world, there is a bit more of that second lane, Josh. Those marbles don't, kind of take out that second lane quite as quickly as they do in the real world. So I've seen a lot of really competitive racing to both the inside and the outside lanes all week long. There's a perspective on board with Cody Harris. That spot lost puts him back to P5 where he started.
I think we're going to start to see those lanes develop a lot as we go through this race, and it really is going to be a bottom-dominated race. I mean, this track kind of races. It's weird to compare it to Old Bristol, but I want to compare it to Old Bristol because it is a bottom-dominated track. You want to get down pretty much right on that inside white line. You don't want to go too low because you see those gray rumble strips that are on the inside. Touch one of those. Doesn't matter if you're in an Indy car or a NASCAR Cup Series next-gen car. You're going to get turned around and up and into the outside wall. But you need to get down to that inside. The game is to force other drivers into a mistake, to force other drivers to wash up the track and then make a move to the inside. Outside moves can be made, but you're going to need a lot of forward momentum going either into turn 1 or into turn 3 to make that happen.
And now the challenge is all the way up for the number 1 spot as here comes Kyle Trudell in the short shoot between turns 1 and 2. 7 goes to the lead, but for how long? Agnew Phillip, good run off a 2. Instead of forcing the issue, though, that Ani 4 will push the 7 down the long backstretch into turn 3. They top out about 192 miles an hour. New race leader early in this one. It's the XPM Toyota of Kyle Trudell.
Good speed from that Toyota Camry now to lead the field as Freenar's trying to work on Peter Irons in the number 1 machine. You mentioned earlier, Evan, Irons really making a big momentum in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series now. I mean, just only having a handful of starts and already a handful of wins as well. Freenars, though, not intimidated at all by the recent success. The 88, of course, a veteran of Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series competition. He'll push himself to the inside in 2 and now up and into P3. It wasn't the best showing in qualifying, but Freenar's trying to show that qualifying not really going to matter for that number 88. He is on a hunt for the race lead.
He is continuing to chip his way through the field. 4 spots gained is the most, excluded Bradley Burke, who we mentioned was best in practice, did not qualify on a time. He started 19th, but is still back into P12 with a little bit of work to do. You can see the field starting to spread out, mostly in line. Only car on the outer lane there was that blue 75 Asoa back in line. He gets passed by the 17, and now a couple rows off of the race lead. It's the 20 of Brandon Gass. On the inside of the 2 is Sam Nieto. That battle for P7. Can't clear him, though, into the short shoot. Can the 2 keep a nose on the quarter panel to fight back off of the turn? Little bobble, small opening for Gass. Still can't shut the door, and back comes Nieto.
Side by side again as to the outside goes Nieto into the 7th spot. Gas and Lariah going to stay side by side as Lariah washes up the track in 3. Tries to keep it off of that outside wall. Very easy to push these cars a little bit too wide and end up trying to knock the catch fence down. But everybody keeps it clean for now. Gas going to stay on that inside line, but Lariah doing a good job at trying to hold his own on the outside line. You're on board with the number 44, Lariah, as he clears him with a big head of steam on the outside.
There's a lot off of the back of that 44 center of the corner as Michael Lariah is losing that spot to the 20 car, and then I should say gaining the spot from the 20 car with Brandon Gass as they continue to fight back. Thought Gass was going to be the big winner in all of that, and in the end the 20 actually ends up in the negative column as he slides back into what is exactly where he started, P9 on the racetrack. Some separation, but not a lot. This is a pretty large and compact lead pack. The top 16 cars all still within 4 seconds of the race leader, and then the intervals start to get bigger by position from that point on back. But look at this big pack of single file cars all drafted off of each other on these long straightaways. You see Lariah sticking his nose out even further up the field. That's Cody Harris, 5th car in line. That red 28 thought about going to the inside of Irons, just ran out of room.
Battle for the lead now is going to get interesting, Evan, because Farinaj has been on a tear since the drop of the green flag. But last time by, Trudell ran a 53.9. It was a 54 flat from Andrew Farinaj. It wasn't that big of a difference, and it's not going to matter as down the back straightaway, side by side for the race lead, and into 3. Farinaj clears him, put the 88 Ford Mustang up to the lead. Could this be a historic 4 Brickyard wins in a row for Farinaj? Might be 4 years too late, but still going to be 4 wins in a row in the record books.
Well, the talk on Sunday was how it was hard to pass at Indy, and at least in the sim, Andrew Farinaj has been able to make it work at the end of lap number 9. He goes to the race lead, and already 3 different drivers have led a lap in this RSR Brickyard 200, and we're not done with the passing yet. Peter Irons trying to get around Agadil Phillip. That would be a battle for 3rd. How does Phillip's car, that blue and white number 94, 3rd in line, how does that car race in traffic after starting out in front and into clean air? Is he going to get swallowed up here, or does he stay on the attack? He even, with a bit of a peek down on the inside of Trudell for P2 there, doesn't go for it, and it looks like Irons is setting up for a run off to turn number 1. A little bit of a wider entry into 4, looking to get the speed off the corner. Not sure it was as good as the 1 car would have wanted. Let's see if he's got the speed now down this long run. It's a long trip to turn number 1. Always somebody thinking about stepping out of line. Looks like no takers at the end of lap 10.
And we already put 10 laps behind us, 70 now left to go. It's not as long as the NASCAR iRacing Series Brickyard 400 was last week, but it is still that half distance that we are used to in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. So still a good amount of time left, at least in the lap counter, but those laps, Evan, are going to tick down pretty quickly. Racing at Indianapolis feels quick. You've always got something going on, whether you're down the long straightaways, you're thinking about your entry into the next corner, and you're thinking about trying to pass the driver in front of you. Each of these corners feels kind of like their own corner, so you the laps go by pretty quickly, albeit them being 54 seconds just about a piece. Don't really feel like 54 seconds when you're in the car. It's a lot of focusing, so the time just really goes away quick. With Agnell Phillip now in 2nd, Kyle Trudell falls to 3rd, Irons in 4th, Harris in 5th. Cam Patterson, remember when he was getting past a little bit earlier on, he has been able to get back by Sam Nieto and now stops the bleeding, P6 for that number 10, as there's that big massive line of cars side by side, and a car on the wall in the background. I think that was Eric Papineau.
Car stays straight. There won't be a yellow, but Eric Papineau a little bit slow as he got at least way up and out of the groove and then got a bit of that safer barrier on the exit. He was getting either passed by Brett Larson or trying to pass Larson in the 17, but he just kind of got up into no man's land, slapped the fence pretty good. No yellow, though. We race on. 21 cars take the green flag in this one. Tom Morano, scheduled to start, does not end up on the grid. It's going to be a DNS for the driver of the 42. Up front, Freenage for the first time tonight pulling away. We had seen Trudell lead 4 laps after Agnell Phillip led 4, but nobody was able to build a gap. And as this battling continues amongst the top 10, there's a nice slide job at the 19 of Bradley Burke in front of Brandon Gass. It'll be a spot gain for both he and Austin Coop. Frenage's advantage up front, meanwhile, almost a full second. It's early, but it's the biggest gap we've seen from P1.
I don't think it's going to be the biggest gap that we have seen. I think he's going to continue to pull away, at least in this stage. I think if you're the other drivers, you're really thinking about that first pit stop. When is that first pit stop going to come? Is it going to be helpful in the fuel mileage game? We talked about the one stop being a potential, and it could potentially be something that most of these drivers go for. They might be able to stop sooner rather than later. All depends on how confident they are in their fuel mileage. And the driver that wasn't exactly too confident there in their passing game was Bradley Burke. He got out of the gas to avoid running into the 53 of Austin Coop and is going to have to reset that move heading down into turn 3. Let's go on board with the 19 of Bradley Burke. Does he go for the pass in 3? He's going to stay right tucked in behind that wake of Austin Coop. Tried to look lower than the 53. He'll get lower than the 53. Sets up the pass potentially for turn 4. Looks inside, not enough of a gap, and he'll stay P10.
Good run this time, though, off at turn number 4. Should go to the inside on Coop, but a battle for P9. Yes, he does. Gets to the inside. He'll have the momentum. Coop sees it coming, and the 53, if he could, would have been waving his hand out of the virtual window net there. They would rather be single file through the corner. Burke was faster. Burke takes the spot away. Not much pushback from Austin Coop, who was having a good night in his own right at +4 spots. But now Burke, 10 positions gained, cracking the top 9. We knew this car had speed for one reason or another. Didn't qualify the car. We're going to find out if there is a cost to these passes, right? The 19, you would think, if he's being this aggressive, going this side by side and making these moves, is going to be tearing things up as there's some smoke and a spinner in front. Think it's the 7 around of Kyle Trudell from the number 3 spot. Cody Harris stopped up on the wall, was P5. There's his reaction as well. I think Harris was just a bystander in that. We'll have to wait to watch, but that was involving 2 drivers in the top 5, and Peter Irons claiming responsibility. So the one car somehow involved. He was 4th in line behind Trudell whenever this started.
Well, I gotta be honest, it's a bold caution claim from Peter Irons already. We'll grab a replay, see exactly what happened to bring out yellow flag number 1 of the evening. But it looked like potentially Irons getting loose to the inside of Kyle Trudell and making the slightest bit of contact. And we'll get that replay queued up now. But first incident that's going to throw a wrench in everybody's plans as far as pit stops go, especially Evan. Now we'll see that first round of things from our leaders as we take a look at that replay and what happens to Trudell and the others. There's Irons to the inside. The slightest bit of contact with the 77 of Trudell, and yeah, Harris absolutely nowhere to go. And I feel bad for the 28 because he definitely did just get caught up in that one on a whim.
Yeah, his reaction understandable because there was nothing he could have done. And again, Irons squeezing at 7 up feels like that he could have avoided it. It was a quick claim. He's going to get an EOL penalty. So although Irons pits as the number 3 car in line, that car will be sent to the rear for the restart. This does take any of those, to your point, small questions of fuel strategy out of this race, because now you could push all the way and could make it on a one-stopper from here. So this is going to come down to execution. Is everybody going to go for 4 tires at fuel given the availability, or is tire wear not enough to justify that? Andrew Freenage from the lead position is only in pit stall number 7, so he's not in the best spot, but he's going to go right sides, left sides as well. I don't know if the number 1 pit stall, though, could help out Phillip, but look at this. Several cars beat Andrew Freenosh off of pit road. It is a blowout, and Agnell Phillip indeed on 4 tires is the first car off of pit road. Andrew Freenosh just missed something in the pit lane. His pit stall time, Josh, not that bad, but a second and a half slower than almost everybody else in the top 10 on pit lane time. I wonder if he had to slow down a little bit early and was searching for the number 7 pit stall. Whatever the case was, Freenosh gave up some time, and it cost him about 5 spots.
Wasn't a bad time in the box, but it was the slowest too out of all of our lead cars. And that time in the pit lane, 50.6 versus Agnell Phillip, 48.4. Also having the fastest pit lane time as well from Agnell Phillip in the 94. That is unfortunate for Andrew Freenosh, but bright side for him, he's driven up through the field once. I think he could very well do it again, and sounds like, Evan, he missed his pit box when he tried to enter it. A little bit of a mistake for the 88. Just cost him 4 spots on the racetrack and the race lead and the control of the restart.
Now, what I was looking for was, where does that number 1 pit stall position itself in relation to the scoring line? And a lot of racetracks, the number 1 pit stall has a big advantage because that scoring line is just outside of the box. So that top car who gets pole position and gets that final pit box doesn't really need to get all the way up to speed. They just have to match the gas, and often they will kind of gain a spot or two there. Phillip does gain in the end, but it was because of the blown pit road entry of a half of Andrew Freenosh. He just went a little bit too deep into the box. And again, unobstructed, right? Lead car in all the way on his own.
He blew by a lot.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily close. It was a very quick recovery, I will say, right? So many times drivers can overshoot it. They're so unprepared that they kind of fumble getting back into position. It was a very good recovery for Freenosh. The issue is when you're pitting under the yellow and everybody comes in nose to tail, that 1 or 2 second delay, I think it ended up being about a second and 3/4, 1.78 or 1.8 seconds of a difference. Even though it was a very quick bounce back, that is amplified that much more by all the proximity.
That's an unlikely mistake as well from Andrew Freenosh. Man, that was just such an uncharacteristic, not only a mistake, but just a very simple one that I think if he loses this race, if he doesn't get the lead back, if he ends up not going to victory lane at the end of the Brickyard 200, I think that's going to be the one moment that he's going to be kicking himself and mentioning in his post-race interview, what if that mistake didn't happen?
So it'll change things up front as Agnell Phillip, who started on pole position, goes back to the race lead. Andrew Freenosh, who led 8 laps, loses 4 spots on pit road. He's down in P5. And the other driver to have led laps in this race, Kyle Trudell, involved in the accident with Peter Irons. He and Irons dropped down to 19th and 20th position as they run. So in the blink of an eye, big mistakes from some of the fastest cars in the field may open things up. Cam Patterson, P2. He has an opportunity to make some noise. Also surprised that Bradley Burke losing out in all of that. We were watching him charge through the field. He had a bad stop as well. Burke falls outside of the top 10 to P11. Agnell Phillip in control on the inside. Green flag back in the air.
No challengers for the 94 heading into turn 1. Sam Nieto tries to clear Cam Patterson. Big moment for Patterson in the 10. He's going to wash up the racetrack, and here comes Freenosh back to the inside, looking for a top 3 spot again, and he will take over 3rd. Now Lariah trying to take over 4th. That was a big loose moment from that number 10 Ford Mustang heading into 1.
And it's tough to bounce back from that on a get up to speed lap, and that's what's hurting Patterson now. They're finally at full song. Freenosh was able to get around him. Michael Lariah trying to finish the job on the inside at a battle for 4th and 5th, side by side behind them as well. It's the 20 car of gas on the inside. The 12 of Cato, sorry, under the 20 gas up top. They're 2 by 2 off of turn 4. Maybe a 3 wide moment behind them as they are pouncing on opportunities off of the restart.
Lariah still to the inside of Patterson. Now Patterson's going to clear him. Lariah stays clear as well. Gas and Cato going to go side by side now. Here comes the 12 into the picture for the first time tonight as Cato goes to the inside looking for P6 off of turn number 2 and going way up the racetrack goes Gas. That forces Ross Cato all the way almost to the grass.
Way down to the inside. Does Cato get back up in time? It's a really shallow entry. You go on board with the number 12 Ford. Equally as bad of a corner, though, for Thomas George. I thought the 6 would have been set up for more success there, but just got a little bit loose under Throttle in the center of 3. Cato clears him off of the corner, and now Bradley Burke going to have to do a lot of what he did in the first run, and that is be on the offensive. That white and blue Get Wet Sport Chevy on the bottom, trying to keep a nose on the quarter panel of the 6. This is a battle for P9 on track. Burke has got it, and he's instantly made up those 2 spots that he lost.
This is the battling that we're watching right now in the midfield. Battling at the front has gone stagnant. 3/10 lead for Agnell Phillip as we've got a bit of aero blocking now from Austin Coop versus Brett Larson down the back straightaway. That I almost thought I was watching the Indy 500 as they exited turn 2 there. But now back up to the battle between Burke and Cato. Contact made. Cato in the wall for a moment.
Burke also got way out of shape as those two came together off of turn number 3. Good recovery. The 12 stays in front, but Burke knows that he has to get moving, and a couple of cars out of line behind him. That's the 28 car of Cody Harris. He goes to the inside of an Nazi Major in the green and white 82. So Harris makes the pass for P11. Nice and clean. They're single file to back out by the time they get to the short chute. And now as they come through turn number 2, Burke not in striking distance yet, I don't think, to get back to Cato.
This is where the field's going to start to string out. We'll see those pockets of battles now start to show themselves. Gas and Davis going to be one of them. 20 versus 24 at the front. The gaps have closed a bit for the lead as now Cato's still in this battle with Bradley Burke. Burke is going to hold on to that spot. Cato and Thomas George now going to be in a drag race as they go by the yard of bricks.
6 car throws it in on the bottom. George really wants to get the pass done. He's going to have to crowd the 12 on exit. They're both out of the gas. And now the 28 of Harris has to check up as they stay nose to nose. Battle for P9 ongoing. Off of 2. Yes, sir. The 6 of George gets that spot back, and a good recovery for the Valvoline Ford after a bit of a rough go right off the restart. 12 peaks to the bottom. Do we see a counterattack? At least not at this moment. And now the 6 finally finds a bit of space.
Space found for the 6. A little bit of space found for Agnell Phillip in the lead as well. But that 94, as he continues to lead, Farinaj with a big head of steam off of turn 4 into 1. He looks to the inside of Nieto. This is for P2. Nieto's up a lane. Farinaj on the inside. Still side by side. Not going to clear him in 1, but he will clear him in 2. Put the 88 back to second place. Now, can he chase down Agnell Phillip for a second time tonight? Some drivers can't even say they can do that once in a single night. Farinaj is going to have to do it twice.
Andrew Friedosh doing a good job of digging out of the hole that he made for himself after that unforced error on pit road. He dropped all the way to P5, and he's back into the number 2 spot. Can he interrupt the serenity that Agnell Phillip is enjoying now up front? It's been very quiet for the 94 off of the restart. He was able to pull away. He was quite comfortable out in front of the field, and now we'll see, can Friedosh use the clean air, I should say, to close in. Better lap that last time in favor of Friedosh. Back here, they're all going to gang up on that 20 of Brandon Gass as the 24 of Davis to the inside. He makes the pass for P6, and here comes Bradley Burke trying to follow suit on the inside.
Oh, Burke loose on the inside. He saves it off of 2. Doesn't end up like Ryan Preece was on the final 2 laps of yesterday's NASCAR Cup Series Brickyard 400. Now Cody Harris, who was involved in the first and only incident of tonight, looks to have a decent amount of that small minor damage he got in that wreck repaired, and he's trying to claw his way back up through the field. Put him to 8th, now in front of Thomas George, and sets his sights on Brandon Gass. But all of these drivers 7th on down to, I'm going to say, P17, all separated by about 2 seconds here on the racetrack, and a good handful of them now side by side heading into turn number 1. These midfields in the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series are always close, and at the Brickyard, it's no exception as Harris throws a big block, slams the door on Brandon Gass.
Yeah, there was only a moment of hesitation from Harris. He seemed pretty committed that he was going to slide up and clear himself over the nose of the 20, whether he was all the way clear at Gas or not. And that game of chicken goes in favor of the 28 car. Does the 20 go back to the inside? Maybe gives him a bit of a shot that time on the entry to the corner. All that did, though, was mess up the entry for Gas. And now it's the 19 of Burke down to the inside. And Burke through as he will move up to P8. That is a race high for the number 19 Chevrolet. But look how far back all of this fighting has made the cars P6 on back. Those top 5 have checked way out from where most of the excitement has been.
All this excitement in the midfield, and right now at the front, that excitement is honestly not there. I mean, at the front, of course, these drivers running really good lap times. 53.9 from Magno Phillip last time, 54 flat from Farinars, 54 ones from Nieto and Patterson, 54 flat from Michael Araya, P5. These drivers are lapping really well. They've all got the speed to win this race. It just depends on who is able to capitalize on mistakes and on strategy the best. We have now gone 10 laps on this stint from when that first yellow flag came out. Not going to expect any takers on pit road for a while. But as Farinars sits behind Phillip, he's running about even lap times, not closing the gap, but he's not shutting himself out either. I think the biggest thing for Farinars right now, Evan, he is lapping about the same or a little bit faster than Sam Nieto and Cam Patterson behind. So no threat out the rear view mirror, only out the front windshield. And Magno Phillip going all the way down to the grass to try and break that slipstream that the 88 of Farinars was getting. I gotta think the 94 might be feeling a little bit of pressure from the 88.
The 88, the only car that's getting bigger in the mirror. Those top 2 only drivers running 54 zeros in the lap counter, and a little bit of a different context, but we saw a lot of that serpentining, right? See Phillip kind of try to run away from Andrew Frenosh behind. Don't just let him suck up all the draft. Even though the 88 does a pretty good job of following in line, there is some benefit to that, but they're also scrubbing a little bit of speed by simply not holding it straight. Is there a benefit in the end? There has to be if everybody on the sim does it. We saw that all night long late last week when we covered the Brickyard 400 for the NIS Open and the iRacing Special Events calendar right here on RaceSpotTV. Everybody was doing it. Look at the cars, 2nd, 3rd, 4th in line. They all do the same thing, chasing the draft. It is not the same as a Daytona, a Talladega, an Atlanta, but the draft is still a factor, and that's on display as they try to use it to catch that 94.
Last time by, it was faster for Farinars by about a 10th. Let's see where we're at here as he still continues to snake his way down the front straightaway. Shades of seeing Indy cars go around the Indy 500 for over 100 years, and it is again a little bit faster for Magno Phillip, but all things considered, very similar in terms of lap times. We're not getting really anybody super faster than anybody else right now up at the front of the pack. These front 2 right now, last time by a 54.142 for Phillip, 54.151 for Andrew Farinars. So top 2 lapping pretty much identical right now as they all try and pull themselves away from the rest of the field. The mid-pack, not a whole lot happening back there. Brandon Gass and Thomas George going side by side into 3, but it is still just a a lot of figuring themselves out right now in the middle of the pack, and you can see really what's going on at the front is a much different race, Evan, than what's going on in the back.
Yeah, up front, it's a game of the draft, and back here, it's just the good old-fashioned knuckle fight because they keep going at it. This time, it's Harris clear of the 24 of Davis in the battle for P6. When the lead cars in your group are fighting like this, you're never going to catch up. A side swipe to the 24 there as that 7 car, a Trudell from a lap down, went through. Burke gets through in the end. It'll be 2 spots and 3 cars that get by the 24. Bad corner for Davis. That again, when you were fighting like this and continue to fight like this, it's only going to allow those top 5 drivers to pull further and further away. I think there's also a bit of self-recognition in some of the battling up front, Josh, as Agnew Phillip asking us over the driver open radio channel if it looks cool when they're zig-zagging all over the front straightaway. So they kind of acknowledge as well it's a bit silly to be chasing each other down, but it's just what you do at Indianapolis, and they're both guilty of it, right? Agnell's guilty of running, and Andrew's guilty of chasing. It's part of the draft aspect of this racetrack.
It's this form of racing. I mean, when you get these cars so woed up, and these are not restrictor plate motors. Well, I guess now just restricted motors, not really restrictor plate going on these motors anymore. But it is not a super speedway package. It is kind of the normal speedway package. So the draft is a big part of it. You're not going to see massive packs, but you are going to see a speed difference being behind one car instead of being that lead car punching the hole in the air. Phillip knows this, Farinaj knows this, and that's why you see the snaking even in this little 3-car pocket that we've got for third. It hasn't had a ton of movement, but Nieto, Patterson, and Lariah still lapping a little bit slower than those front 2. That's why they're in their own little 3-car pocket back here, but still important, especially for Patterson and Lariah, who are following Nieto. Might be able to last a little bit longer in the fuel mileage game, especially if they're lifting a little bit more than the 2 is, kind of punching the hole in the air, like I mentioned, that Phillip is doing in the lead. Pretty much same exact thing Nieto is doing as well in the lead of this little group.
And some of these battles may be worth some points as we close in on halfway home in this Brickyard 200. At the end of lap number 40, we will pay out bonus points to all of the drivers inside of the top 10. 10 points for first, 1 point for 10th. You can do the math from there in between. So even though it may not be a race-winning move at this juncture, as again, they all snake down the front stretch, and eventually you got to get back up against the outside wall to make the arc into turn 1. There are points on the line for each of these battles that we continue to watch as Patterson doing everything he can to get around Sam Nieto. These two, I think, squarely now in the battle for third, as both Farinaj and Phillip have pulled away ahead of them all the way down to the grass. Solo, they're almost on the fairway headed down the backstretch.
I like that golf course mention, with this being, I think, the only racetrack where there is not only a golf course right off the outside, I believe off the back straightaway. 3 holes are contested inside of the racetrack as Nieto tries to knock the fence down out of turn number 4. I think he was thinking about how good of a round he'd have on the golf course here at the Brickyard.
It'd be a fun one, right? We stumbled upon the golf carts, but not a time to play 18, but certainly
didn't have time
one of the world's most unique,
unfortunately.
Oh yeah, the unique course, and again, just one of those other little touches that makes Indianapolis such a unique racetrack as well, is that you've got those holes that basically line. You mentioned the couple that are inside the oval. They're also just there beyond the fence on the back straight on the outside of the racetrack as well. So inside and out covered well as that 10 car almost went right through the 2. I don't know if Nieto lifted early or if Patterson was caught sleeping a little bit, but he screwed up his corner entry as to not pile drive the 2, and now it puts him at risk with Lariah to the bottom. Not going to matter in the end. The 7 goes to the outside. I was going to say the 7 going to the outside. The push to 10 clear. He'll clear no matter what, but now protects the bottom, and somehow Lariah ends up the loser in all of that, and the 7 not happy yet is still Kyle Trudell trying to fight back from a lap down, better than a lot of these race leaders at making passes. I don't know if Trudell's going to be able to drive all the way up to unlap himself the old-fashioned way. I think he's banking on a yellow as the only car currently one lap down at a very good position to receive the lucky dog. But the 7's making his claim at this point that if he can get back into this race, he's got a fighting shot at making some noise.
Trudell actually made a really smart move. I mean, being everybody was on the lead lap, he brought it down into the pits about 9 laps ago, put on 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles, and now is only 1 lap down with how big this racetrack is and how it takes about 54 seconds now with the tire wear to navigate yourself around this track. He brought it into the pit lane at a 49.2 seconds in the pit lane time, put on 4 fresh tires, and now with those brand new shoes is skirting around a lot of these lead lap cars and still is the only driver 1 lap down. And of course, being the only driver 1 lap down is still the first driver 1 lap down. And if he does unlap himself the manual way, passing Freenarge and Phillip, who we can see up the road, that's still just going to help him when a caution comes out. He'd be in the same position he'd be in if he got the free pass.
Depending on lengthwise to just logistically round up and catch the field, he could pit with the leaders as opposed to having to pit at the back end. Regardless of that, he's in a very good position either way. The only concern and timing would have to be really bad for him is if there's a gap between he and Agnell Phillip. If Agnell, when he starts to catch lapped cars, Brandon Westbrook would be first up, but that's still 20 seconds ahead of Phillip. We're not there yet, but if he got real lucky, or unlucky I should say, and Phillip passes some of those cars and then they end up just ahead of the 7, that's the concern. So there is a incentive for the 7 driver to be as close to the leader as possible, just to narrow that window of the 1% chance that the timing works out very poorly. Again, there's no surprise, Trudell's got speed. This driver led 4 laps earlier in the race and again finds himself down here after some issues early in this one. 2 away from halfway this time by. Freenash's challenge for the race lead has slowed. It's a second advantage in favor of Agnell Phillip. 3rd place relatively uncontested for the moment as Nieto, Lariah, and Patterson have simmered down as well. Is anybody going to make a late pass for some points on the line? 3 or so miles to go combined until we pay him out at halfway.
Phillip is in a perfect spot to grab all 10 of those halfway bonus points. I gotta say again this season that he would grab those halfway bonus points. But right now, for that driver of the number 94, Agnell Phillip, he is, I think, just stone cold focused like normal. This is the normal that we see from Agnell Phillip. Of course, sporting the championship belts behind him as well as he leads and paces the field here at the Brickyard. He'll take that halfway bonus next time around the Yard of Bricks.
Agnell is well on his way into the playoffs, and unlike in the NASCAR Cup Series, a stage win is kind of the equivalent, although there are no yellows for these midway bonuses. You do not get anything tangible to carry into each round of the playoffs, so the only thing that Agnell needs is race wins, and even those only help him for the round of 16. Again, this is all long game, and I think the midway bonus points for Agnell Phillip is simply a byproduct of the number 94 running to win this race, and he's been out of the headlines for just a little bit. It's funny to say that, granted that he won a race last month and the month before that and the one before that. You get it all the way through February. He's won at least one a month, but it hasn't been a lot of Peter Irons the last couple of weeks. Irons, of course, claimed responsibility for the yellow. He's in a battle for the last paying position in P10, but Agnell Phillip, we're halfway at Indianapolis, and he'll cash in 10 more bonus points. Who gets the final couple of spots side by side in a battle for P9? George gets the 2, Irons gets the 1, and Brandon Gass, 11th at the stripe, walks away with nothing. Now trying to get to the inside of the 6. They touch. Sideways is Thomas George as Brandon Gass used him up.
On the radio, he says he did not mean to do that, and he was not clear when he came down. That could have been a big moment, especially in turn number 2, where we have seen so many wrecks happen. And Evan, I am going to bring up the tire flying over you in the grandstand in turn 2 at Indy in a moment. But right now, we got to take a look at that replay of what just happened, or almost happened, I should say, coming through turn 3. Here comes Gas looking. He taps the back bumper of the 6, and luckily that Ford Mustang was able to save it. And we stay green flag racing, but not exactly a tire flying over the grandstands in turn 2 like you know a little bit too well, Evan, but that almost was going to be our second yellow flag of the night.
Yeah, there were no virtual, what was it, a Chevy Cruze or a Chevy Malibu that got flattened on the outside of the fence in turn 2. There were no virtual Chevrolet coupes that were damaged in this incident, but that was a fun experience at the Indy 500. Thankfully, nobody was hurt in that one, but that was, I think, the only time I've been at a race where my phone started blowing up with people asking if everybody was okay by us. One of the unique things, and again, very fortunate that nobody got hurt in that one, and it's one that, you know, it'll be like a weird, innocuous memory. Remember that time the tire flew over the fence at Indy and hit some lady's car? We'll remember that one fondly in 25 years as kind of some random IndyCar bar trivia. As the battle continues, it's Cam Patterson who's been sliding to backwards. Door contact there. He and Harris give each other a bit of the business. It's a fight for P5 and 6, and Bradley Burke pledging his allegiance to the inside, going to give a boost to Harris. Almost faked him out. The 19 helped the 28 draft, and at the last moment almost put it on the apron to try to pass him.
And look at Patterson on the outside. He got a massive chunk of momentum heading into turn 3, and he went to the outside, and as he panned through that camera shot, you could see the 10 gaining momentum on the outside line, and then all of a sudden now he's behind the 19 of Bradley Burke. Well, he had to get out of the gas aggressively through the middle portion of turn 3, because that outside wall in these short chutes, they come up very quick, and it becomes a very, very narrow racetrack in those short chutes. If you're on the outside line, I think Cam Patterson could see a one-way ticket into the outside wall to try and bring that catch fence down. And luckily, he got out of the gas and keeps it off of the safer barrier. But unfortunately, now is going to have the Aussie 38, Matt Danson, all in his rearview mirror for P7.
It's been a surprisingly quiet night for Matt Danson, who's kind of got the dark mode paint scheme on that number 38 machine with VRS and Altus Esports colors on the car, part of the dominant Altus XA51 Pro Alliance, who lead the team championship. And now he goes to the inside of Patterson. Patterson knows he's faster, lets him on through, tucks back in line. Matt Danson now up to a race high P7. Not as easy to kind of track the anticipated speed out of the 38 at Danson as we've been able to with Burke, because Burke was fastest in practice. We knew when he didn't queue, he was going to be good. We could always assume Matt Danson's going to be good, Josh, but no real way to track that because he didn't put down a time in practice or qualifying in the session. But he, much like Burke, did not have a time in a queue. Danson started back at 18th spot, and he's passed 11 race cars to get the P7. So we've talked a lot about Burke, but equally as credible is the case the 38 car's making for having a good machine. The problem is for both of these cars is, yes, you're able to make passes, but at what cost? They're both about 9 seconds and change behind the leaders as the bank is open. Peter Irons is coming to pit road with 35 laps to go. We are inside of the fuel window to get to the end of this race.
So Irons is going to lay his bed 35 laps. He's saying he can make it in that fuel tank. Harris and Burke go side by side for 5th, but now is this going to be a case of driver see, driver do? Brandon Gass sounds like he's going to pit this time by. Let's see what Agnell Phillip does as he rounds his way off of turn 4. Is going to not be next. He almost hits the wall off of turn 4, but he does not pit. Farinar stays on the racetrack as well. That's the faster Kyle Trudell to his inside. I think for anybody, now that the green flag stops are happening, the strategy kind of blew up for Trudell a little bit more than I think he was wanting. I think that strategy now for him might be out the window as Gas now pits from the lead lap. No other takers on the pit lane just yet.
Time where you would always see the leader respond right away, and there's certainly going to be some tire fall off, which will give those short pitters the advantage. But Agnew Phillips' best lap of the night at 53.835. He's running 54.8 right now, so it's only about a second of fall off. That's not to discredit and say that that's not good, because look at Peter Irons on the fresh tires. He's going to be faster than the 94 to Phillip. He's going to pass him with ease. Irons actively is making up time to Agnew Phillip. If you were 5 seconds behind him, you pitted 5 laps before him, roughly you would make that time up if he were to pit 5 laps later. But it is not only that math equation, Josh, otherwise it would simply be a race to see who could pit as early as possible. On the backside of this, as Peter Irons wears those tires, as Minazzi majors in and starts to wear the fresh tires, that will give him an advantage. Now, once everybody else pits, the later takers, they'll end up on the better tires. The advantage will swing in their favor. And again, we do all of this again in the opposite direction. Unlike in the real world where fueling a car takes more time than putting the tires on it, that could implement and influence, I think, strategy a little bit, but it's not quite the same here in the sim, right? This is not a 40-lap run and a 40-lap run. You could have pitted 10 laps ago. They could probably go another 10 laps, right? So some drivers may want to go a little bit longer to put less fuel in it, but again, tires evens it all out. So I don't know if the fuel time, that was kind of a big storyline, especially with all the fuel mileage that was going on in Sunday's Brickyard 400. That was a big factor. I don't know if that's going to be as much of a factor here on the sim, just because that timing isn't quite the same.
I also got to wonder, Evan, who's going to hedge their bets on a caution? I mean, we still have 32 laps left in this race. This could still see a yellow flag put a dampering in everybody's strategy. If everybody pits and then we see a caution with 5 to go, I mean, who's going to be the first takers down into the pit lane? Are we going to see the likes of Brandon Gass, Minazzi Major, Peter Irons, who kind of all pitted on the reasonable, quick and early side of the stint? Austin Coop also just brought himself down into the pit lane. He's exiting off of the pit lane now. I mean, do we see drivers potentially for an overtime restart stay out later in this race, as Andrew Farina is just going to lay his bed with 31 to go? He's into the pit lane.
And this is really the first big move, because it seems like that it has been the Agnew Phillip and Andrew Freenot show since that early yellow flag in this race. They were able to pull away significantly, and I'm not surprised that Andrew comes in first, because Agnew's gap had started to really grow between the two of them. Clearly, the 88 not as good on the long run as Agnew Phillip's 94, and now I would not be surprised if the 94 responds, because the car who just pitted was the car immediately behind him, less caught up with the drivers further on down the road. And there it is. It is the response for the 94 machine. It is a pretty easy pit road to get onto here at Indianapolis. Pit road speed 55 miles an hour, but I say that with the caveat, Josh, that it is only as easy as you want to make it. You could get down to 55, no problem, but that's never the objective for these drivers. They're always going to try to break at the last minute. You see some smoke in the background there. That was Grant Davis locking up the tires. Cody Harris is also on pit road, so it is only as easy as you want to make it. The other thing that we haven't touched a ton about, and it was the source of some drama over the weekend, Josh, and that is the pit lane exit here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. These drivers cannot cycle onto the racing surface until the exit of 2, that blue cone top right corner. They have to stay on the access road all the way through 1 and 2. Now, you see the access road down here with race leader Michael Araya. You do not need to use it to enter pit road, but exiting the pits, they must stay on that flat access road all the way through turns 1 and 2. It is flanked with grass on either side. I have seen many a driver put 2 tires in the grass and wreck it over the years, and it is one of the trickier pit road exits on the service.
It is very tricky because you really want to get up to speed. You want to get going on that access road, and there's the grass on the outside, and you can see drivers hedging their bets and taking a lot of asphalt through the short chute. We saw the penalties that rained down for a couple of drivers. Chase Elliott comes to mind first on getting a little bit too far up onto the racing surface. You cannot do that in the iRacing sim either. You will be hit with an unsafe pit exit penalty that can serve a drive through there. So you need to stay on that access road all the way until that blue cone. As now, with the handful of drivers that have still yet to pit for their second pit stops, we got Papadow, George, Patterson, and more in the pit lane right now. This ends up being the closest battle on the racetrack. This is Steve Soa and Brett Larson, who have still on the tail end of this stint are trying to stretch it a little bit further. Lariah and Nieto now pit from the top 2 spots. That leaves Bradley Burke and Matt Danson as your top 2.
Just waited on the last couple of drivers to come down pit road and complete this cycle. It's the top 5 who have yet to come in. Burke, of course, gets the benefit of leading a lap. That's going to be a bonus point for him. We saw Michael Araya lead 2. He gets a bonus point as well, so there is some incentive as well for some of these drivers to stay out and get a bonus point. I don't know if any of them can stretch it long enough to flip the strategy, right? Sometimes at a fuel strategy race, some cars will stay as far as they can on fuel, hoping that if there's a yellow at the very end of their limit, then everybody else who had pitted earlier will want to come down for tires anyways. I don't think there's enough of a buffer there. It's a dead heat to pit road between your 1 and 2 cars right now. Burke and Danson are in. Ross Cato stays out. It'll be a lap led for the number 12 Ford.
It only leaves 3 drivers now that have yet to pit in this stint. That is Cato, and that is also Soa and Larson, who continue to stay out. I would assume the 75 of Soa and the 51 of Larson are betting on a yellow flag right now. I don't know if Ross Cato is going to do that. No, he is not. He has just said over the iRacing text chat that he is pitting in this time by. So that will move Steve Soa to the lead, assuming Soa doesn't pit on the front straightaway this time by. But now Agnell Phillip has assumed the net race lead. You can see 2.5 seconds back in that number 88. That is Andrew Freenarge. That is net P2. How about Peter Irons that has worked his way into cycle back into P3 after that pit cycle? I think that is not a successful overcut for the race lead, but an overcut for P3 nonetheless.
Gaps work in his favor, that he's 5 seconds ahead of Brandon Gass, who's only got a lap of better tires than him comparatively. So Gass is maybe going to struggle to make up that gap, and then by the time you get to the cars with really better tires, the Harrises, the Larias of the world, you're talking about 8-9 seconds. So this could be a move that puts Peter Irons into a position to finish 3rd in this race, as now it's Brett Larson's turn to lead some laps up front. Cato pits from P1. Brett Larson and Steve Soa now the only 2 drivers to be able or have yet to come down pit road. And again, still well within the number I mentioned from the very top in this 80-lap race, that if we had gone green all the way, could have been a little bit of a fun one on the strategy, because 40 is not an impossible number, but it does take some finesse. It does take driving, with a little bit of intent to be able to get to that point. And both of these drivers right here now going on lap number 39 on this run. And why not? It's a battle for the race lead. Soa closing in on Larson, not able to get the run into turn number 1. He backs off, but he seems like he wants to pass him under green here.
I think these drivers are also thinking bonus points at this point. Of course, every single lap that these drivers lead, if they lead 1, that nets them a bonus point. For Steve Soa especially, I mean, that's gotta be important for where he sits in the standings right now. 61 points to the good. That is not safe. That is a couple of bad weeks for Soa. Could see the driver that's in front of him, Brett Larson, piggyback himself into the top 16 for the playoffs. I mean, this is valuable bonus points, as Brett Larson is going to lead 1. He pulls it into the pit lane. Is that a car that is trapped? It is. Larson is going to hit Was that Brandon Westbrook? It was a stranded car on the entry of the pit lane, and Larson just has made major contact and now has major damage off of that.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with Brandon Westbrook, but that car was coming to pit road off cycle, missed the pit lane entry, crashed, and then the car was sitting there for quite some time. And the racetrack was completely blocked, Josh, but it's a bright green car in the middle of the road, so it is certainly on Westbrook to clear the track, but I don't know how Brett Larson didn't see the 98 until it was too late.
I think he tried to come to pit road, missed the entry. So this is, I believe it's on a live racetrack. No, he's in the pit entry, and then here comes Larson. Did he think he was going to tow and completely misjudged it?
I've learned over the years to not trust somebody else with the tow button. If there's a car in the middle of the track, and again, this is coming to pit road. I know it's a 4-tire stop. I know it's going to be fuel. That is the default pit stop setting on the sim, but oftentimes if you don't have a spotter, if you don't have a crew chief, Josh, coming to pit road, you may be glancing down, making sure your pit stop settings are dialed in.
I'm still struggling to even figure out what Westbrook was doing. I mean, he locked up the tires. Was it a late decision to try and stay out, then realize that the commitment cone was there and then try to come back? And then Larson completely misjudging that entirely?
I can think of the fact that the car sits there was there some sort of technical issue and then it clears out, because it's hard to tell if the car was immobilized, but he could have, if the car was not immobilized, driven forward, and if it was, could have escaped out. So again, in the end, if you're an insurance claim, the Westbrook's blocking the road, he shouldn't be there, but also for Brett Larson, you're not expecting a car to be there, but I know you're not expecting that, but the car wasn't moving, and I'm not trusting that guy to get out of the way. It is a
so peculiar,
weird pit road entry incident. And as we were breaking all of that down, Zoa got his lap lead. He came to pit road. That put a button on the pit cycle. All cars have pitted. And it is an update that both Brandon Westbrook and Brett Larson's cars to the garage. Their night is done. Also, maybe a bit fortunate for Agnew Phillip that the car came to a stop, Josh, on the pit lane as opposed to on the racing surface, because at no point did the sim throw the caution for the initial wreck or the contact between the two cars.
All of it being on the pit lane definitely saved Agnew Phillip from having a yellow flag to throw a massive wrench into this race. But we talk all the time about Indianapolis being a tight pit road, especially for these NASCAR stock cars. Never have I seen a wreck at the entry to the pit lane work exactly like that. I mean, it has happened before. It's happened before in the real world as well. I think Indianapolis being the most prone to pit lane wrecks with just how thin that pit lane really is. But that was just a very peculiar pit road entry. But now we've got racing back on the racetrack. Brandon Gass, Cody Harris, they're on each other's bumper. Harris gets Gass loose off of turn 4 and put Harris to the inside of Gass to look for P4. He'll get it at the stripe, now trying to hold it.
And Cody Harris has got the better tires of this duo by about 4 laps. I think that emboldens him to be aggressive here. And in the end, Cody Harris is going to make the pass for P4. Brandon Gass slides to P5. Plenty of cars in this battle, though. Lariah just behind them, just a little bit further back. The white 19 to Bishita Bradley Burke as well. So 4-way battle for what is 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th on the racetrack as they go now. And inside of 20 laps to go in the Brickyard 200. If there are no further incidents, everybody with enough fuel to get to the end of this race. Gap between the leaders, 2.2 seconds, not missing anything there. The question is P5 as far down that Gass is going to slip, or does Lariah and Burke have more in store? 44 looking, doesn't make the move yet.
This is the closest battle now on the racetrack. I think Grant Davis might have just had a moment in his battle with Ross Cato. That was a pretty aggressive position gain for the 12. Now here comes Lariah to the inside of Brandon Gass. He's got Bradley Burke in tow behind him as well. Kyle Trudell is also just pit. Remember, he was off cycle from the rest of the field. He has come in for his last pit stop of the day now with 19 to go. He will need a yellow flag now to get himself back into the race for the lead lap.
Hoping that there's something else in this race that can shake things up and give him another hope, as he is the only car down pit road and was the very last of them who needed to come down and be serviced. Watching some of the best fighting on track right now, it is still this group just in the middle of the top 10. Michael Lariah in the 44 car, having been able to make a pass on Brandon Gass, is pulling away, and now Burke going to do the same. The 20 pitted earlier than all these cars around him. Again, it is the repeat of what you sow. We mentioned it was a good move to pit early, but eventually the advantage swings the other direction, and that is what's happening right here, as now he has fallen down to what is going to be P7. And I don't know if anybody else behind him going to get there. Sam Nieto next car on deck, but that's about 3 seconds back.
And all of a sudden now, everybody has also spread themselves back out with 17 to go. That closest battle that I mentioned, both Cato and Davis has fizzled out. Grant Davis, kind of in general, has fizzled out. That was a battle between Matt Danson and Austin Coop. Now we go back to Grant Davis, who has fallen into the clutches of Thomas George and has lost a solid bit of speed as well out of that number 24. A bit weird. He is on the same strategy as everybody else. The oldest tires out of these lead groups, Evan, is still the one of Peter Irons, who's about 4 seconds off of your current race leader. Is snaking down the back straightaway is Ross Cato to get by DeAndre Kane in the 90, who is 1 lap down.
The serpentining returns as DeAndre Kane yields to the outside. Bit of a quiet night for the driver, who is in a peculiar position when it comes to these playoff standings. A bubble driver for XPM outsiders. Well, he's on the outside of the playoff bubble looking in. He is close enough, though, and I don't think tonight going to be the points that he wanted. But again, small field, points for starts, better than nothing, and at least stays in the conversation. But every time it's, especially with these regular season races ticking away, an opportunity lost for DeAndre Kane. He goes high again, a little bit out of the groove more than he wanted, but does in the end give Davis and George the spots. His 13th and 14th. They're able to get by him without incident.
16 laps to go. Now we've got the grouping of Harris, Lariah, and Burke starting to close in as well. I don't think anybody right now is catching Agnell Phillip without a yellow flag. Lap times right now, 53.6 for Agnell Phillip, 53.9 for Andrew Farinars. So unless we get a yellow flag, or unless we get a major mistake from Agnell Phillip in the number 94, Evan, I don't see this going the way of Andrew Farinars for 4 in a row. But I do have to wonder just exactly what the stat is of a first place for Agnell Phillip, with a second place being that 88 of Andrew Farinars. It has got to be at least maybe around the range of 20 all time, at least since the next gen era.
Yeah, Agnell Phillip, we look back in series history, and there's a lot of Andrew Freenach in those books. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, the constant was Andrew Freenach, and at times there were indicators in the Winter Series of what was to come. Freenach won a 2018 Winter Series championship before he won his first Cup Series championship in 2018 later that year. Well, how about for Agnew Phillip? Won a 2023 team championship in the Winter Series, but that had come after he established himself here in the Cup Series, a 2022 and a 2023 Cup champ. Became the only driver, in addition to Freenosh, to be a multiple-time champion. And during those Freenosh years, much like the Johnson years in the Cup Series, everybody had said, well, no one's ever going to pull an Andrew Freenosh, win 4 championships, and insert Agnew Phillip, who has done this most impressively so while Freenosh is still active. Now, yes, the cars notably have changed over that time. I think if it was up to Andrew Freenosh, he'd toss us in some Gen 6 cars. He loved being in the Gen 4 Cup cars for the Winter Series last year, but what Agnew Phillip has been able to do against some of the top talents, impressive, and you can see on the scoring pylon and visually that already Agnew Phillip is pulling away from Andrew. We saw that Ani4 was better on the long run of the previous stint, and we've already reached that point in this one as that gap starting to balloon.
And balloon out again. 53.7 last time by for Agnew Phillip, 54 flat for Andrew Freenosh. It is right now Agnew Phillip's race to lose at the front of the Brickyard 200. Back to the battle that we mentioned earlier, outside or on the cusp of the top 5. 4th, Cody Harris. 5th, Michael Lariah. 6th, Bradley Burke. Across the yard of bricks they go. Harris on the defense as Lariah looks for a 4th place and to continue a really good streak of really good finishes for Michael Lariah. Right now, where he stands in the points is good. He has that win that he earned earlier on this year in 2024 at the Iowa Speedway, and now tries to go back-to-back top 5s and make it a stretch of 6 top 10s in a row for that number 44. He's only finished outside the top 10 4 times in the initial 16 or so rounds that we have had so far this season.
Here's a good drag race, and it's going to give you a good perspective of how long this front stretch is as Michael Lariah trying to get around Cody Harris. Almost a dead heat at the stripe. Give it to the 44 car. Lariah up to 4th. Burke thought about the 2-for-1 special, looked to the inside of Harris, wasn't able to do it. There are pockets of battles all over this racetrack. George, Coop, they're funny back there with Cato and 10th on the back with 3 cars under a blanket inside of the top 10. It's hard to beat, and Harris going to go all the way to the inside, trying to block the 19 of Burke. I don't know if that's sustainable for 10 laps, but the 20 ain't going to do everything he can.
I don't know if that was a block, more so it was a push from the 19 of Bradley Burke. He was on that back bumper. 2 Chevy Camaros trying to work together to pass a fellow Chevy Camaro in P4. That number 44 of Lariah. Let's look back to the battle between Gas and Danson. They're in a fight. Austin Coop and Ross Cato are in a pocket as well of 2 cars. Does Danson look to the inside? He does. But the door is going to be very quickly shut by the number 20 on the 38. Where does Danson try and respond? He'll stay behind in 2, try to set up a pass for 3.
All kinds of fights going on as everybody knows it's go time to the inside for position and on the offensive and clear in turn number 3. Trudell makes another move as a lap down car showing he's got speed. What a night it could have been for the 7 of Trudell at 4 laps early. He's running out of time for a yellow flag to bring him back into this race. Ahead of them, Burke was able to make the pass on Cody Harris. Harris was in the grass halfway down the back straight with the 19 eventually, though, just too fast to continue to hold him off. Burke now into a top 5 spot. It may not be the win that the 19 was capable of, and really curious if he can get a top 3 spot out of this in the end. Josh, what he says on, did he intentionally not qualify? Was there something that kept him away from it? Because best car in practice, he's by far and large passed more cars than anybody else tonight. A top 5 result after starting back there, still a big one, but with this kind of speed, you can only think, would he have had enough to challenge a Freenosh or even a Phillip for the top spot?
might have, but at this point, I mean, you mentioned he has passed the most cars tonight, and that is true. But he is up 14 spots from where he started back in P19 with no qualifying, like you also mentioned. Agnell Phillip has not put a foot wrong, and at least with race pace, the lap times that have been run since we have dropped the green flag, and in this stint as well, with everybody on fairly equal footing with tires, Burke even on newer tires than Agnell Phillip. Last time by 54.131 from Burke, 53.91 for Agnell Phillip. Phillip is still just lapping faster. Might not show it exactly in practice, but he does show it when it comes to hot laps, and he does show it when we drop the green flag.
And you mentioned that these laps can fly by at Indianapolis. This is a long race, much like it was at Pocono 2 weeks ago. Again, the math equals out to the same thing. Long racetracks, as Phillip got a bit of the fence that time, but long racetracks, long laps, 200 miles at the end of it. But there's so many things going on, especially on a lot of the very aggressive and competitive restarts tonight, that you kind of blink, it's one pit stop under green, and we're in the home stretch. Now, I promise you, those are very long laps for Agnell Phillip, right? Got a bit of the fence that time at 1 and 2. That's not going to spook him too much. He's got a comfortable advantage over Andrew Friedosh, 3.7 seconds behind, but it's the unknowns of anybody could make a mistake at any point. It's going to be a real long 6 minutes or so until Phillip can see the white flag. He just wants this one to come to an anticlimactic finish. You see Friedosh in second behind, way on the horizon. That third shot you caught a glimpse of was Peter Irons. This is a good old-fashioned Agnell Phillip butt whooping at Indy so far.
Gotta mention still, we do have 3 attempts at overtime if it does come down to that. And next time by the stripe, if we do get a yellow flag, we're almost guaranteed an overtime finish. That still is a possibility if we do see anybody get turned. I think if we're going to see any of it, might be in this little battle we've got here. This is Nieto and Danson. Kyle Trudell also behind this group. Or actually, I think it's DeAndre Kane that is at the edge of this group. No, that is Kyle Trudell in the 7. It still is 1 lap down as well after being severely off cycle from the rest of the field when it comes to strategy. But Danson gets by Nieto, and we'll split that gap already to 2-3 tenths. Battle for 13th, it's Davis and Patterson, and they're going to get a bit aggressive in 3.
And this is exactly the kind of stuff that Agnell Phillip's worried about. We've seen a lot of near moments. We've had a wreck. We've had one that we got away with on the entry to the pit lane that can cause problems for Agnell Phillip, and these two going to be aggressive. In the battle for 13th and 14th, Patterson had the momentum, and all of a sudden, Grant Davis, the better car, on the inside to 1. They're both going to throw it in. They touch in the center of the corner. Patterson, top side, gets around.
But Patterson to P13. He started up in P4. It was a really, really good start to the night for Patterson. He was one of those top 5 drivers that we talked about in that first stint that really had shown their muscle at the front of the field. And unfortunately, not a lot to show for it now, as he's going to get re-overtaken by Grant Davis down the back straightaway, back to turn 3. And they'll complete another lap as well. 4 to go that Agnell Phillip just took by the yard of bricks. Patterson will try and set up another pass on Davis, but goes a little bit too wide, has to keep it off the outside wall.
And now the counter strike from the 10. This time it's a role reversal. Patterson unable to play defense topside last time. Now can the inside work for him? It does. Here comes the crossover from Grant Davis. Set that one up. These two are having fun at a battle for 13th and 14th. Slide jobs like they're on IRP down the street. Instead, it's on the oval at the Brickyard. Patterson, better exit. 24 not going to go away. It is still a dead heat.
And this is all for P13. This is how much those points matter to these drivers at the front of this field. Hasn't been the best going for Grant Davis. He is behind the 8 ball severely when it comes to the points. Comes into tonight 50 points back from the cut line. Cam Patterson, 76 points back from the cut line. They need good runnings. What they really need is wins. If they're not going to get the wins, they need good points nights, especially with Brett Larson not having the best night. Now scored P20, who is on the cut line. Same with Eric Papanow. He's still on the lead lap, but he's P15 behind this group of two.
You just can't take your eyes off it because you know another attempt is coming. Davis to the bumper, not going to go for it. There are going to be 2 laps to go at Indianapolis for Agnew Phillip, who is almost a half a speedway ahead of these cars. They're in turn 4. He's already going down the backstretch for the penultimate time. More spots up for grabs. Lariah, healthy gap for 4th. Can he stay there? Danson, Nieto, Gas all within a second and a half of each other for more spots in the top 10. Can anybody else steal a couple more points out of this one as Phillip looks for the one to go?
We're in the points racing season. If you're not going to take the checkered flag, you need to maximize the amount of points that you get on a race night. But as Agnew Phillip crosses the yard of bricks again, it's the white flag from Barney the Flagman and 1 lap to go, Evan. And Agnew Phillip can see an 8th checkered flag in front of him. I hope he's got a ceremonial brick to give a little kiss to at the end of this race, because he is looking to win the Brickyard 200 and the return in 2024.
This race started 9 laps in with 3 different drivers leading laps. Thought it was going to be a back and forth showdown all night long, but it was a consequential single trip to pit road under the yellow, in which there was a mistake from Freenosh as the leader and a perfectly executed stop by Phillip that got him out in front, and he did not look back at any point. He was the best car on the long run. He was the best car on restarts and the best car all night long, who's going to go back to victory lane. Race win number 8 this season. It's Phillip at Indianapolis.
That is a typical Agnew Phillip dominating run. Qualified on pole, takes the win. And at the line, we've still got battles 2 by 2 at the line. That's Gas and Nieto going for 8th. Nieto keeps it. Gas in 9th. Cato rounds out your top 10.
In the 2 car in the 20 who are the ones fighting behind Danson. That's a close finish for 8th and 9th, just behind Matt Danson. Couple of more close finishes. Austin Coote, Thomas George, less than a second apart as they finish in 11th and 12th spot. But in the end, it is the seeming inevitability of Agnew Phillip and what this season has been for him. And again, quiet with air quotes. After 2 weeks without a win, it's going to continue a streak of at least 1 checkered flag every single month of the season. As Agnew Phillip, race win number 8. It is race win number 11 for the A51 Pro X Altus team. And we'll allow him to do the burnouts on the bricks, Josh, because you can just hit Control F4 and it cleans them right away.
I think actually, though, he gets a big slam from, I think, Matt Danson. I was gonna say
his teammate Danson there couldn't see him coming in.
I was gonna say that they would be cleaned up pretty automatically by the sim, but now they're gonna need to clean up a whole car automatically in the sim. But results, Evan, after 80 laps of racing at the Brickyard, sees Agnew Phillip on top.
Yeah, maybe Matt Danson feels strongly about burnouts on the bricks.
Maybe.
And that was just the Indianapolis Motor Speedway enforcement policy. That final margin of victory in favor of Agnew Phillip, 4 seconds and change to Andrew Freenosh in second. Peter Irons does end up third. We'll talk with all of them in just a few moments. Michael Araya, Bradley Burke, top 5, of course, Burke. It's a good drive from the rear for the driver who didn't qualify. He finishes ahead of Cody Harris, Matt Danson, Sam Nieto, Brandon Gass, and Ross Cato.
Back from there, P11, Austin Coop, Thomas George finishes P12, Grant Davis, Cam Patterson, and Eric Papanow with issues early, ends up P15 on the day. Steve Soa and Manatzi Major going to round out the drivers that finished on the lead lap, and back from there, only 2 drivers finish, 1 off the lead lap. That's Kyle Trudell, DeAndre Kane, Brett Larson after an issue with the driver that finished P21, Brandon Westbrook. Both of them finish over 20 laps down, and then Tom Morano never taking the green flag in his number 42 Rogue Wave Racing Ford. So 21 drivers take the green flag and finish tonight from the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But Evan, let's not waste any time. Agnell Phillip is done burning down on the bricks, and he's now standing by with you in victory lane.
It is an 8th race win in 2024 for Agnell Phillip, and we're with him now. Agnell, congratulations on another win. I know it's fun to win at a racetrack like this, so we'll talk specifics in a little bit, but it's been a while since we've had a cup race here at Indianapolis. First time since 2020. I know it's not everybody's favorite racetrack, but it's certainly a unique challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a unique track. Pretty tricky to get the corners right. It's actually a fairly technical track, and you have these long straightaways, so if you make a mistake, you have to pay for it the whole time. So I think it actually, in many ways, plays. It is a bit of a driver's track, but then you have the added draft kind of element to it. So it's just like, there's nothing else on the schedule we go to. It's cool to be able to come back here and race again. I mean, I think I prefer it to the road course, but that's just because I'm better at ovals and road courses. But it's fun.
Yeah, I think if we surveyed your teammate Matt Dancy, they may say the opposite in terms of which of the layouts here he likes the most. But this race was interesting, right? It starts early. We got 3 different drivers who lead laps in this one. You get a couple off of pole position. Trudell gets a lap led. And then we get that caution flag. And then it seemed to change, right? A bit of a mistake by Andrew that opened things up for you. What changed from that point on? Because given the first stint, we're thinking, all right, someone's going to be hounding you. And not that it didn't happen, but it just seemed like a different race after that restart.
Yeah, I mean, on the first stint, it was close on fuel, so we were all kind of fuel saving. I don't think Andrew was fuel saving at all, but I think I was fuel saving. I think Kyle was fuel saving, and Peter. So we're all kind of just running there, trying to make it to like 41, 42, so we wouldn't have to fuel save the second lap. And I was starting to kind of right when that caution came out, I was starting to try and reel Andrew back in because I didn't want him to get out of draft range. And we would have seen how that shook out. I think it would have been interesting. But then Andrew obviously makes that mistake. And, I think it seemed like once we got kind of singled out, they weren't really packed up behind me to be able to Drew was never able to get a huge run on me. So I was able to just kind of take advantage of the clean air, just run a pretty, safe, conservative sort of race from there on. And then eventually, he started falling off because that's just what happens, when you run in dirty air for a whole stint. So then, I just try to kind of play the rest of the race as well as I could. I think I made all the right decisions kind of for the situation. So I'll take it.
You guys will have a one more week off, and then it is full speed ahead. Hopefully, if things go well for your case, you are not missing a race on a Monday night until November 11th, because it is going to be the last 4 rounds of the regular season, 10 races all the way through the playoffs without a break in between. Does any of the prep change? Is it a mental or is it a physical change in the prep when you go from some off weeks here or there to it's nonstop?
I think obviously we'll start ramping up a bit more, probably start doing, some more kind of official races in this car to really try to get to the place where we're peaking in the playoffs. I think the wrinkle is, the schedules change quite a bit, I think, in the playoffs for some of the rounds. So that'll present some kind of new challenges, I think. I think that first round we've got Atlanta kind of leading it off, and I think is Dago also in the first round of the playoffs. So there's 2 essentially restrictor plate races in the playoffs, which is pretty nuts. So that'll be interesting. I think we've got a pretty good cushion for those early rounds. But I mean, with the way this format is, it's all about getting to that final race, and then once you get there, then yeah, you're really putting in a good bit of time to try and make sure that you're, up to pace with where you need to be, to try and win the race. We've had an influx of talent, I think, here with Peter has been really fast, so that'll be another kind of challenger up at the front. I don't know whether Liam or Kevin plan to join. I know they raced over Daniel, like some of these really fast guys, so those could all be kind of like new wrenches that get thrown in and kind of force the competition level to go up there. So we'll just see. I think kind of the balance that I've had with this year has been pretty good. The record's been pretty good, so we'll see if we can keep that up.
It certainly stands for itself, as it is an 8th race win in 16 rounds this season. It's a long, hard-fought battle, not a lot of breaks tonight, so we'll let you get out of here. Before we do, though, as always, sponsors and shout-outs to those good folks. Who makes it happen for you?
Yeah, I got my mom's birthday is tomorrow, so I'm gonna say an early happy birthday to her. Sad I can't be there in person to celebrate with her, but that's I just wanted to shout her out. I had to thank my colleagues at the Republic Guild, the guys over at A51 Pro and Lockdown Racing. It's a bummer that we had the Pocono race get canceled for Road to Pro, but we're excited for Indianapolis Raceway Park coming up on Thursday. And yeah, just also been trying to stream a lot more recently. So follow me on Twitch at Agnell_Philip. Would love to hang out with y'all. Stream these races every week, every time we do them. So yeah, and thanks to you for putting this on, Evan.
Well, we appreciate you being a part of this, and we appreciate you giving us the extra time, Agnell. Congratulations on the race win. Enjoy the deserved off week, and then it's going to get real busy. We'll catch you in August.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Race winner tonight from IMS. We'll continue things down. Joshua Lee's got our 2nd and 3rd place finishers. First up, it is Andrew Freenosh, who gets another P2.
Second place for Andrew Freenosh tonight. And Andrew, for you were trying to go for 4 in a row, but unfortunately you just could not make it happen. What more did you need out there tonight?
Slipped through my boxer on that caution flag where we all came down pit road and lost the lead there. I don't know if it would have made a difference, honestly. Agnell is so talented, so fast now, but I think being out front, clean air may have given me a little bit of a shot, but other than that, I really couldn't do much. Kind of felt prepared for tonight, felt like we gave it our best foot other than that small mistake on pit road. So I really still don't know, still chasing them, still trying to figure it out.
And now looking forward, you still have a decent amount of time before that playoff cutoff as well. But looking forward now, are you championship focused, or are you still kind of performance focused, making sure you can finishes before the end of the season?
I've been saying it all year. I guess we're getting close enough. We're still in the points championship. This was supposed to just be a part-time thing, just come out and have fun. But I've enjoyed this car more this year, so been showing up to a lot more races, and I guess we technically are still in a playoff spot. So I guess we're going to make our mind up if we're going to run that. So yeah, we're just coming out trying to win races, to be dead honest. Still prove we can do it. I think we've had like 2 or 3 good shots this year, and we can add this one to the list. But we're just coming out here trying to win, not really looking at playoffs yet.
Well, congratulations once again on your 2nd place finish here from the Brickyard. I know it's not exactly what you wanted to walk away with tonight, but nonetheless, still walk away with a podium finish. Who all makes it all possible for you?
Just want to say congrats there to Agnell on the win. He's having a heck of a season, probably one of the best we've ever seen. So I do want to appreciate that and how talented and how awesome it is to see this. It's really fun chasing him every week. Evan, for all you do, thank you for putting the sessions to hot, because it was loose out there and that was a ton of fun to race. All the drivers love racing against these guys. All the fans, I hope you put on a good show. And big shout out to my spotter and crew chief, Paul. I know he couldn't be here tonight, but he always shows up and I appreciate the support. That's about it.
Congratulations once again on your second place finish. That is Andrew Farinaj, who tried to make it 4 in a row, could not do it, Evan, and looks like you'll be standing by with Peter Irons in the 1, who also tried to go for another race victory tonight, but unfortunately just came up a good bit too short.
Yeah, Peter Irons starts tonight's race in 3rd. He finishes the race in 3rd, but I know there's more to the tale of the tape than that, Peter. Congratulations on a good finish in this one. And again, you continued the streak of top 5s. I know you would have liked to have gone for another win. What was the difference maker tonight between you and then Andrew and Agnell out front?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to apologize to Kyle. I know we talked after the race and during the race, but I just made a mistake and got into him and took him out, so that kind of ruined both our races. Right. The right rear from wearing, and then on longer he just take off. He just get off the corner so much better, and if somebody beats you and drive off of 2 or 4, you're not going to pass them.
I know one of the discussion points amongst some of the tenured members of the series was they were tired of cold sessions. So drivers voted for things to be set to hot going forward. Some drivers have said that it was already a noticeable difference where things were slicker, harder to drive out there. Did you notice that change at all while you were driving?
It was definitely a challenge. At Pocono, the track depth was so low that we could just fly around that track really easily. We had so much grip that it wasn't a challenge at all. But here, it was definitely really difficult to get off the corner, making it really hard to pass, and making the car really want to spin out on exit. So it definitely made more of a challenge for every single one of us that's driving the car. I think it helped people spread out more, just because that skill that's needed is a lot more impactful when you have a hotter track.
We have a week off, and then we return to a short track at Richmond Raceway. I know the short tracks and these cars, at least in the real world, have not been a match made in heaven yet to this point on the sim. What are you expecting for that race in 2 weeks?
I expect Agnell to be fast, because I remember watching our first Richmond race, and Agnell would qualify in pole and then just fell back to 4th, and then by lap 100 he's out there leading with a 10-second lead. So I think Agnell is one to watch for Richmond, and just trying to match his long run speed or even be better than it, just preparing that way.
We're looking forward to see. It's been a lot of Agnell and Peter Irons recently after we had the likes of Cody Harris, Matt Danson, and Michael Araya. You've put your name in that conversation in one of the best drivers since that midway point. We'll let you get out of here. Before we do, though, Peter, anybody you want to say hi to?
I really appreciate Kevin King helping me for this race and other races as well. He's the reason I've been able to put my name up with these guys that have been the top of this series for a long time. So I really appreciate his help coaching me for each week. I also appreciate Vantage Racing. I know they're always in the chat. I remember to put the scheme on today. Unfortunately, I made a mistake with it, but hope to more good races with that amazing paint scheme.
Would look good running towards the front tonight, Peter. We appreciate you being here with us on a Monday. Congratulations on another good result, and enjoy the week off.
Thank you.
So that is a chat with all of your drivers in the top 3 tonight. I get a big thanks, Peter Irons, Andrew Freenash, and your race winner, Agnell Phillip, who make it happen tonight at Indianapolis. And to the point I made talking with Freenash a little bit ago, Josh, one more Monday night to enjoy it, because then it is full throttle, pun intended, to the end of the year. 14 straight Monday nights with that championship belt on the line again.
Enjoy an off week, enjoy the Olympics, and then it is right back to playoff racing. We're not exactly in the playoffs yet, still have a little bit of the regular season still to go, but if the playoffs aren't at the forefront of these drivers' minds yet, well, they are about to be at the forefront of these drivers' minds, especially if they haven't gotten that win, they're on the cut line, still have points to play with. You need to get serious about the playoffs now if you want to compete for a full throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series championship. It's now 8 wins for Agnell Phillip. Can anybody match him, and can anybody drop him from championship contention? We're going to find out in the last couple of rounds of the season.
And the beauty, if you're one of the other drivers who have competed this series, right? It's a lot of Peter Irons talk. It's a lot of Agnell Phillip talk. Don't ignore the other 38. We've had 40 drivers compete so far this season. The beauty for those drivers is you've only really got to beat them once. And that would be that winner-take-all championship. That may be much to the chagrin of some of those drivers who have been the best. Agnell Phillip's average finish, Josh, tonight improving to a 1.6 on the season. It's been incredible stuff for him. But until next time, that is it for us here tonight from IMS. On behalf of our entire team at RealSimRacing, RaceSpotTV, and for your broadcast team tonight. For my producer and co-host Joshua Lee doing the double, my name is Evan Pasoko. I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate once more Agnell Phillip, who's a race winner on Monday night. We've got 1 week off, and then we're back at it non-stop through the end of November as we return for round number 17, Monday, August 5th at iRacing's virtual Richmond Raceway. That race and every race of the 2024 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series can be found exclusively here on RaceSpot TV. Till next time, good night from the Brickyard.